Hi, everybody. Welcome to my presentation. I chose to present on the Colonial pipeline hack, which a lot of you might remember. So a little bit about my presentation. Like I said, I chose the Colonial pipeline hack. The Colonial pipeline hack was launched in May of 2021, so a little over a year and a half ago now. The group that launched this attack calls themselves DarkSide. They are a group from Europe. And this was a ransomware attack. I'll go into a little bit more detail about what a ransomware attack is soon. And this group, DarkSide, successfully received 75 Bitcoin as their ransom as a result of this attack. So what is a ransomware attack? Proofpoint defines ransomware as a type of malicious software that threatens to publish or blocks access to data or a computer system. And the kind of general process behind a ransomware attack is to access an organization's data. Obviously, you're doing that illegally. You either threaten to publish the data, you threaten to encrypt it, and you request a ransom in exchange. Oftentimes, Bitcoin is frequently the requested payment in ransomware attacks. I'll go into a little more detail about why that is soon. But first, let's go over what the Colonial pipeline is. So the Colonial pipeline is obviously a pipeline system. It's headquartered in Alpharetta, Georgia, covers a strip of close to 6,000 miles spanning from Texas through New Jersey. And according to the Colonial Pipe website, they specifically transport various grades of gasoline, diesel fuel, oil for heating your home, jet fuel, and all sorts of other fuel for whatever needs they might have. This is just a quick map of the pipeline system. As you can see, it stretches through a lot of states. You can also see why it's called the Colonial pipeline, because of a lot of these states being colonies. So why attack the Colonial pipeline? Why did DarkSide choose to attack the pipeline specifically? According to their website, the Colonial pipeline transports approximately 45% of all fuel consumed on the East Coast. So this makes them a company that is responsible for a lot of consumerism. A lot of people on the East Coast rely on the pipeline to supply gas for them. And this makes the Colonial pipeline unable to go out of business for more than short periods of time. So this made them quite susceptible to have to pay a ransom when they are put under circumstances such as these. So they're likely to pay a ransom due to their role in fuel distribution. And additionally, the ransom that was requested by this group, DarkSide, was 75 Bitcoin, which was worth a lot at that point in time. Is not worth as much as it once was. But even then, 75 Bitcoin was worth about $4.5 million, right? And this, while it seems like a huge number for someone like me or someone like you, is really not that big of a number compared to some figures that we see in the Colonial Pipeline's financials. According to Zippia, the Colonial Pipeline's annual revenue is $500 million. And compare that to $4.5 million, it's really not that much. So yeah, I mean, if someone came up to you and said, I stole your car, give me $10, you can have it back, you'd probably say, okay, yeah, I would do that. And then why request Bitcoin? As I mentioned, at the time of the attack, which was May of 2021, one Bitcoin was worth around $55,000. So that made 75 Bitcoin worth about $4.5 million. And Bitcoin kind of looked like something, it looked like an unstoppable force at this point in time. 75 Bitcoin was going to be worth a lot in the eyes of DarkSide. Clearly, if you've been following Bitcoin at all, that pattern has not really held over the past year and a half, but Bitcoin looked like it was going to keep going up and never come down. And then the main reason why ransomware attackers tend to request Bitcoin is because Bitcoin payments are extremely difficult to trace. And according to CNET, while crypto transactions happen on a public blockchain that everyone can view, they are not necessarily linked to an identity. So I might get a request, or I might send a Bitcoin to someone, but I don't really know who that person is. I have other ways to identify them, but I don't know who exactly I'm sending something to. So that makes it quite appealing for someone who is trying to keep their identity anonymous. This is just a quick graph of Bitcoin's value over the past 10 years or so. I have this red arrow pointing to where Bitcoin was at the point of the attack. So even though most of the ransom was ended up getting recovered, the payout really wasn't as much as it seemed like it was once going to be, due to the volatile nature of Bitcoin. So what were the motivations of this group, DarkSide? Why did they want to attack the Colonial pipeline, and why did they launch this attack? And the answer is money. As with any ransomware attack, unless you have some sort of political agenda that you're trying to get across, your motivations are usually strictly financial. You exploit a vulnerability and you want to turn a profit on it while keeping yourself anonymous, hopefully. And just some details about the attack. So this group, DarkSide, accessed the Colonial Pipeline's network using a reused password that is believed to have been recovered through a separate data breach. So an employee reused the password, and the password that they used on this other server was leaked. And then they were able to kind of just grab that password and plug it in for the Colonial Pipeline network. And this group, DarkSide, stole 100 gigabytes of data within 2 hours, which is an incredible amount. They then proceeded to encrypt it. They use a hybrid encryption scheme, according to Kaspersky. They call it a SOS 20 stream cipher combined with the RSA 1024 public key algorithm. So they infected this Colonial Pipeline network with ransomware, which led the pipeline to shut down because the pipeline clearly did not want this ransomware to continue infecting their network. So what they did was decide to shut down, which led to them halting production for a little while and obviously having some pretty drastic effects on the East Coast of America. So here's a quick timeline of the attack. As we can see, on May 7th of 2021, the attack was launched. Shortly thereafter, the pipeline shut down their network. And later that day, the ransom was paid. A couple of days later, on the 9th, President Biden declared a state of emergency. And then 3 days later, pipeline operations were resumed. That did not mean that everything went back to normal. We did see it took a few days for things like gas stations to continue to their full functionality, or resume to their full functionality prior to the attack. So let's go over some consequences of the attack. As I'm sure a lot of people who are watching this video experienced, there was a shortage of fuel for vehicles along the East Coast, which led to long lines at the gas station. I remember I went to the gas station one time over this week and a half when we were dealing with this. I waited for about 45 minutes at a gas station that usually I can just pull right into, no problem. So I waited. I remember I got about $10 worth of gas, so a little over 3 gallons at that point in time. And the pumps were just moving so slow. They were so bone dry that I remember sitting there for 5 or 10 minutes and just trying to get every last drop of gas that I could. And it ended up taking way longer than it usually does to get gas. The attack led to slight price increases for fuel. According to CBS News, it was about a 7-cent increase on average, which is notable, but not exactly breaking the bank. This was the first time the average price per gallon of gas went over $3 since 2014 in America, according to CBS News. And what I would do to go back to having gas be just $3 a gallon. Yeah. A few more consequences. An executive order was passed requiring greater cybersecurity measures for government agencies. This was passed by President Biden. The Colonial Pipeline did pay that ransom of 75 Bitcoin initially, which was later recovered by the Department of Justice. They recovered 63.7 Bitcoin in June of 2021, according to Tech Target. I'm not exactly sure how you recover 7/10 of a Bitcoin, but these are a few questions that I have about my presentation. So what is the goal of a ransomware attack? I went over it. why do most ransomware attackers request payment in Bitcoin? These things kind of relate to each other, which is why I asked them together. And then number two, describe the process behind a ransomware attack. What are the general steps that an attacker takes to carry out a successful ransomware attack? This is a list of my references, and thank you for watching my presentation.